So this is from Apple. I don't work for Apple. I'm not getting sponsored by Apple. I'm not endorsed by Apple. They're not paying me. They're not sponsoring me. They're not doing anything for me. I use their products, and that's about as far as my relationship goes with Apple. It's an older video, but I play it before every talk, like I was saying. And I want to get your take. And shout out any answer. It's fine. Why do you think that I play this video before every talk I give? Why is this video important? Emotional impact? That's a good answer. I've never heard that one. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good answer. What else? And there's no right or wrong answer either. Any answer is fine. What else? Say it again. The reason for accessibility, that's a good one. What else? Inspiration, what else? Yep, help to provide context around accessible software. What else? What's that? What else? Great answer, what else? It's something to think on, right? It makes you think. That's not the answer, but it makes you think, right? It makes you ponder. There's a few people in this room right now that are using assistive technology and you probably don't even know it. If you're using assistive technology right now, raise your hand. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people without their hands up that are using assistive technology. They don't even know it. Your glasses. Technology does not have to be digital in order to make and improve someone's life, right? I wear glasses in front of a computer. If I'm sitting here directly in front of the machine, I have to wear glasses or everything's fuzzy. And the older I get, my eyesight's getting worse, right? But technology doesn't have to be digital for it to improve someone's life. Technology is created out of a need for something to make someone's life better and easier, right? That's why we do this. We have to look at the bigger picture. We have to be cognizant of not just ourselves, but our future selves, the people in our lives, the bigger world that is out there. All too many times we are building and shipping software experiences that we think are cool, that a marketing person thinks is cool, that a branding person thinks is cool, that a design systems team or a design team thinks is cool. Sometimes those experiences don't work 100% of the time for accessibility reasons. When I started writing code, way back in the day, we didn't have CSS, we didn't have JavaScript. Everything was centered, really small font, black background, yellow text, purple text, lime green, that was cool to do. Yeah, that might be accessible, but that's way out of the realms of what is going to be good today, right? So we need to be cognizant of these things. We need to be thinking of these things. I get this question a lot. Why? How did you get involved in the accessibility space, Chris? Why do you travel around the world and talk about accessibility? Why? My answer is pretty simple for me. My mom is a boomer. She just turned 68 this year. She's about this tall. And I have to talk really loud for her to hear me, even if I'm 5 feet away. So she's got some hearing disability going on. She's starting to lose her hearing. Now, she doesn't have hearing aids, not yet, maybe hopefully never, but she has a hearing disability. She has macular degeneration of one of her eyes. She wears glasses. At some point, her vision is going to go entirely. If you're familiar with any type of degeneration, there is no going back from that. I used to have, I probably still do, degenerative disc disease, which turned into full back surgery. There's no going back from that. Stargardt's disease is a form of macular degeneration in the eye. You go totally blind. So she has a vision disability. I could have talked to her 20 minutes ago and told her, hey, Mom, I'm speaking at a conference in Atlanta, I'll call you back. She probably could have called me 5 minutes ago and said, hey, what are you doing? And would have no recollection that I told her 20 minutes prior that I was in Atlanta about to give a talk. But she can remember anything from 1977 like that, who she was with, what fur coat she had on, my mom was fancy, what kind of beer she was drinking, what kind of cigarette she was smoking, what bar she was at. So we have a little bit of a cognitive disability going on. My mom has arthritis. Her bones hurt. Her nerves hurt. Her body hurts, right? It's hard for her to walk sometimes. It's hard for her to get around. So she has a mobility type of disability. Now, knock on wood, and there's some wood here. At the moment, she doesn't have any type of situational or temporary impairment. Broken hand, broken arm, broken finger, broken wrist, right? She doesn't have a newborn. A lot of times we don't think about newborn children. That's a temporary impairment, right, when it comes to using the web. Knock on wood. And that's just 5 of the main types of disabilities that we're trying to be cognizant of when we're building. But at the end of the day, if I can build an amazing, accessible user experience for her, I have done my job as a worker on the web. It is your job to be shipping and caring about not just yourself, your future self, and the people around you in the bigger world. That's my why. Now, granted, she still uses a flip phone. She doesn't have a computer. She's a typewriter girl. But if she did, it'd be a different story, right? So if you didn't know what your why was today, I hope that after this talk you can go back and reflect a little bit, and maybe that light bulb will go off, because it might be for you, your future self, or someone in your life. Thank you for coming to the talk. Accessibility in the Enterprise, the relationship of A11y and ROI. That's me, Chris DeMars. I'm a senior developer advocate at DigitalOcean. Is anybody familiar with DigitalOcean? You use DigitalOcean? You love DigitalOcean? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I do got some swag up here. I got some stickers and pins. So after the talk, you want to come and grip some of those. Totally cool. I got a couple bags full of stuff. But we are like your one-stop shop platform as a service. You can deploy stuff. We have our own Kubernetes offering, our own managed database offerings, object storage. If you're doing anything in the AI or ML space, we just dropped our GPU droplets that are running on NVIDIA hardware. So pretty cool stuff. If you want to check that out, you can join our Discord, etc. But that's the company I work for. I'm also a Progress Telerik champion. We can talk about that later. I also believe in Bigfoot, UFOs, and ghosts. So if you don't want to talk about any of this stuff in this talk, we can have a whole conversation about all of these things. Anybody believe in Bigfoot? Come on, you nerds. Come on. Fine. UFOs? All right. Ghosts? Yeah, maybe. Okay. All right. Does anybody have a favorite cryptid? You can say it in here. It's fine. My favorite cryptid is Mothman. That's my favorite cryptid. So, just saying. Anybody, any Mothman fans? That's well, then you should be a Mothman fan. You can find me on Twitter at Salt and Burnham. You can scan this if you want. If not, SaltNBurnem, Salt and Burnham. If you're a Supernatural fan, you'll understand the reference. Any Supernatural fans? Yes, you are Supernatural fans. Buffy, any Buffy fans? I love Buffy. Charmed fans? Oh, well, it's old Charmed is the best Charmed. Let's be real. This one gets everybody. Stranger Things. Most of the hands go up for Stranger Things. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, you can catch me on Twitter, Salt and Burnham. I'm also saltandburnham.bsky.com for Blue Sky if you want to head over to Blue Sky and give me a follow. One thing I do ask and request is that if you are taking any pictures, please make sure that you're adding alternative text to any media that you're putting out there on socials. LinkedIn, Instagram, anything, any socials. Whether that's a GIF or a picture or a video, please put alternative text on there. We want to try and be as accessible as possible. Question time. If I had to ask you, and I'm going to ask you, how many people around the world have some type of disability around the 5 that I've talked about? Hearing, visual, cognitive, mobile, temporary, situational, and hidden. We don't always think about the hidden impairments. If I had asked you how many people around the world have some type of disability, what would your answer be? 1 in 5? Okay, what else? What else? 55%? Okay, what else? 95? What else? I love these answers. What else? Not that you're wrong, but what else? There's a spectrum. Everyone? Very, very possible. Somebody gave me that answer at a conference one time, and I brought it up with accessibility people, and they said, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. when you factor in the hidden impairments, right? A lot of us are struggling internally with a lot, right? Without knowing me personally, I don't have a vision disability or a hearing disability, and it's never just black and white, on and off. This accessibility is not, oh, they're deaf or they're blind. That's not how this works. So if anybody ever tells you that's how this works, you can call BS right away, right? But no situational, no cognitive, no mobile. But I have diagnosed health anxiety with accompanying OCD, and if you didn't know me, you would have no idea that I wake up every day thinking that I'm going to pass away. I wake up every day that way. I struggle every day. Medication, therapy, friends, books. That's my struggle. That's my impairment. That's my disability that I have to live with. But you wouldn't know that. And nobody is obligated to tell you that they're fighting a battle you can't see. So when you really think about that, and the world of IT is one of the worst for neurodivergent and people with mental health issues, right? There's a lot of us out there. And I would personally liken it to everyone. Now, depending on if you go to the WHO or CDC, they say about 1 billion people around the world have some type of disability. That puts it between like 20 to 25%-ish among 7 billion people-ish, give or take. I don't really know about that answer. 20 to 25% seems a little bit on the low end. If we're really breaking it down, I would say maybe 30 to 40%-ish. But this could all change, right? This stuff changes on a daily basis. So it could be in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, right? But if you're looking at the data, that's sort of what breaks it down. But, I get this all the time, but no one at the org has a disability, Chris. Nobody that works here has a disability. Why do we need to make it accessible? It's internal applications. I call BS every time. You have to internalize that, right? Internalize that percentage, that 20 to 25, that 30 to 35, 40% of people. Bring that internally. I used to work with developers who were colorblind. I worked with developers who were deaf. I worked with QA and BA who were colorblind, right? So when you get pulled into a conversation with a developer that can't see the application they're building because the colors aren't working, now you have to start having these conversations about collaboration. And how can we make this more accessible? Because if you at the front line are having issues with this, chances are someone else is going to also have issues with it as well. So you need to bring that inside, bring that in, internalize that. How many have heard this term before, A11y? Okay. Do we know what this term is called? Not the makeup of A11y, but what this combination of numbers and letters is called. Do we know what that word is? No? Perfect. Love it. No, not accessibility. This combination of letters and numbers is called a numeronym. A numeronym is, hopefully this spotlight works for me. It's a little sketch. Either way. You take the first letter, you take the last letter, you count the letters in between, you put them together, and you get your numeronym A11y. If you work in internationalization, you've seen this. I18N, that's the numeronym for internationalization. If you work in localization, L10N, that's the numeronym for that. Does anybody work in the Kubernetes space? So you've seen K8S, that is a numeronym. It's just a shorter version of the word, make it sound a little bit easier to pronounce and say. So anytime you hear the term A11y or ALI or ALI in the context of web and software, not in the context of being an ally in the community, chances are that person is talking about accessibility. So now you know. Oh, Chris told me about that in this conference talk. That's called a numeronym. What is accessibility? That's a great question. That's a loaded question. It's a very loaded question. The question I like to pose is this. Let's move up and down, man. This is wavy. Anybody else see that wave in this? It's pretty gnarly, eh? I feel like I'm surfing. Hey, DigitalOcean, surfing, get it? Boom! What is web accessibility? That is the better question. This is from the W3. Web accessibility means that websites, tools, and technologies are designed and developed so that people with disabilities can use them. I like that answer. There used to be another answer prior to this, but it's been changed, and it was really much just focused around people with disabilities. And that's not the way this works. We aren't building multiple experiences for multiple people all around the world, okay? We're not building 5 experiences. We're building one experience that everybody can benefit from. Anybody remember the days of the M.Dot websites, the mobile websites? Am I aging myself? I could go way back to 96 and age myself even more. We didn't have mobile development then. M.Dot, Connect.Tech.com. I mean, that didn't exist, but M.Connect.Tech.com. Usually it was built with jQuery mobile. You had an M.Dot domain. That was one experience. Then you would have Connect.Tech.com, and that's your second experience. 2 experiences for 2 people. We don't do that anymore. We just don't do that anymore. And I'm sure there's probably M.Dot sites that still live out there somewhere. But we're not building an experience for people with visual disabilities, or hearing disabilities, or cognitive disabilities, or temporary disabilities, or mobile disabilities. We're building one. And that's it. And it starts with design. Your design team needs to understand accessibility. Flat out. They have to understand color contrast and how the foreground and the background works. They have to understand user flow. You have to understand the differences between 90-degree angles and rounded corners, believe it or not. You have to understand a little bit of color psychology, and you have to understand just a smidge of the WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that you should all be following. Level AA, 2. 2.1, I don't know if 2.2 is a standard yet. And this is all going to change depending on if you're in Canada, if you're in Mexico, if you're overseas. Different laws apply everywhere, but the WCAG is a universal thing. You want to follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, Level AA. If you're doing everything that you're supposed to as a web developer, you should hit A, level A, no problem, the conformance level. AAA is a different story. Chances are you'll never hit AAA, and that's totally fine, unless you work for some type of academia institution or a government institution. Then AAA, you kind of have to try to hit AAA, but it's extremely hard to hit AAA. So it's real requirement out there in the wild is usually just AA, and you're good to go. So, we're talking about this, right? And it's an open web. And if an open web means an inclusive web, because that's what we're trying to build, and an inclusive web means a web for all, my definition of web accessibility is a little different. Web accessibility means that everyone can use the web. Not just people with impairments and disabilities. Everyone should be able to use the web. Everybody should be able to have an amazing, accessible user experience regardless of impairment or disability. Do we all agree? Yes? Cool. Accessibility is not just a requirement, it is a must. It is something that you should be caring about from the beginning. I don't care if you're a designer or you're a VP, in the whole entire spectrum, if you are touching code or have your hand in that experience in any possible way, even if you're attending a meeting, it is your job to care about shipping an accessible user experience. Because there are 2 things that a CEO or a product owner is not going to want. 1, someone can't use the website because it's not accessible. 2, if the performance sucks and the person goes somewhere else. It happens all the time. You might have the most beautiful looking website, but it might not be accessible. If it's not accessible, that user, that consumer, is going to go to this website over here that kind of looks super janky, but it works flawlessly, and it's accessible, and they can do what they need to do, and now you just lost a customer. You might even have a lawsuit on your hands, which we'll get into. You want to make sure that you're doing all of these things from the beginning. Now, I talked about this a little bit with my mom, and we're talking about different types of disabilities, but not limited to these, right? So when we talk about hearing disabilities, we have to be cognizant of. We have sensory neural hearing loss, conductive hearing loss, a mix of those 2. We have cognitive disabilities, math comprehension, reading comprehension, autism, various levels of the spectrum. These are cognitive disabilities. We have mobility disabilities, so arthritis, cerebral palsy, MS. These are these types of mobility disabilities that we are trying to keep in mind and be cognizant of when we are building on the web. Temporary, situational. Broken hand, broken arm, broken finger, right? Something that will get better over time. And I bring up the point of a newborn child. Trying to hold a baby while you're trying to work. It might not happen to you, but it does happen. It's hard for some people to do that, right? Your kid will get older and they'll be able to run rampant on your house and everything will be fine, but it's temporary. Right? You have a broken hand or a broken finger, you're going to heal. But at that time, being able to use the web might be a disadvantage for you, right? I challenge everybody in this room, after today or during today or when you're back at home, don't use a mouse, don't use a trackpad, and just use your keyboard to navigate the web. See if you can do it. And on top of that, just use a screen reader. How many Windows users do we got in here? Okay, so I've heard Narrator has come a long way as far as a screen reader, but you can download NVDA, which is the screen reader for Windows. There's also a tool out there called JAWS. JAWS is kind of expensive, so don't worry about that. Mac users? Mac OS, anything? Okay, iPhone, iPad, and your Mac all come with VoiceOver built in. The best way to use VoiceOver is with Safari. That's a whole other story. Any Linux users that are using a GNOME distro, okay, Orca is the screen reader of choice for GNOME-based Linux distros. When you are writing code, part of the manual testing process is using a screen reader. There's no cutting corners. We don't do that here. You have to use a screen reader to test. And when I say use a screen reader, I don't mean read it while you're hearing it, because we call that cheating. Close your monitor a little bit, or put like a dark colored garment of clothing over the monitor. If you love writing CSS, and I mean real CSS, write some CSS in the dev tools to blur this. Throw a filter on your application on the body, blur it just a little bit, various levels. You need to be testing with a screen reader. So I challenge you. I want you to all have a no mouse day. Try not to use a mouse or a trackpad. Use the keyboard. Fire up a screen reader of your choice based on your platform and see how well you can do it. And I want you to tweet to me, if you're on Twitter or Blue Sky or LinkedIn, and say, Chris, I did it, I passed, or Chris, I did it and I failed, and don't lie to me because I will find out where you all at. I have friends that are hackers. I will pull your IP. Just joking. I won't do that. Trust me. I'm not going to do that. But definitely, dear, seriously, let me know. Let me know if you could achieve it. Tell me how long it took you to say you gave up, right? I'd love to know these things because I've done this at other companies, and I've had coworkers come back and say, Chris, I don't know how people do this. It is so difficult to use a screen reader and without using a trackpad or a mouse. So try it out. And then we have vision disabilities, and the vision disabilities there's a bunch of them. You have field of vision, and you have color vision deficiencies, or color blindness, or color CVD. There's field of vision. There's so many, but there is a difference between low vision and poor vision. Poor vision can be corrected. Low vision can't be corrected. So just one of those things to keep in mind. This is a great quote from Santina Kroneser. Disability can strike at any time, even temporarily. Something as commonplace as a broken arm, for example. It's not just about building for other people, and I talked about this. She said it's kind of also being selfish, building for your older self or building for your injured self. There is nothing wrong with thinking about yourself at the time, right? Especially if you are that person with the impairment of the disability. But you don't know what's going to happen in a week or 2 weeks, right? You don't know if that person in your life that has MS is going to use this application, right? These are all things we need to be thinking about. It's not just us siloed away and using an application and building an application just for us. It's never just about us. Although many times we do think it's about us because we have deadlines and we got to get stuff and we got to ship it, right? So it's about, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. I got to cut corners. You can't always cut corners. So it's going to come back to bite you in the end. So what happens when you don't make your experience accessible? What do you think happens? High level, what happens? That too, yeah. What else? Plenty of lawsuits. So what does that look like? That looks like this. You get a lawsuit, and you get a lawsuit, and you get a lawsuit, and you get a lawsuit. That's exactly what that looks like. And if you own the organization, you're really going to know. Chances are, it might not be disclosed to you unless you do work on an accessibility team or you are brought in to fix accessibility errors. Then you will work with a legal team. Chances are, though, they're going to keep that on the hush-hush, right? This is a little bit older, but we're going to look at 2020 by the numbers. This talk used to be revolved around 2017 numbers, but we're going to look at 2020 by the numbers. So, over 2,000 website accessibility lawsuits were filed in 2020 alone. Consumer goods industry was targeted with the most accessibility lawsuits. Why is that? If somebody wants to buy something they can't because it's not accessible, it just makes sense, right? New York had more than half of all cases filed nationwide. Anybody from New York in here? Well, then this kind of hits true. Nearly 20% of all website accessibility lawsuits were filed by just 6 plaintiffs. And over 265,000 demand letters were estimated to be sent in 2020 alone, right? So look at this. A famous grocery store out there. We have a famous art supply store. One of many of the popular hotels and a very, very big popular bank. The money that had been paid out once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. This grocery store at one point had to pay out $37,000 to $250,000 in website accessibility charges. That's a lot of money. Famous art supply store, there is no data on that, but it's one of the famous art supply stores that are out there. Another one of the popular hotels, the information isn't disclosed, but it's probably a hotel that many of you have stayed at in your lifetime. And then this popular bank, just 3 of the times that I could find. At one point, they had to pay $4,000 per applicant, $4,000 per applicant, because their site wasn't accessible. $30,000 at one point, and then a whopping $66.6 million in website accessibility lawsuit. It happens, right? It just does, but you might not know about it. And then a famous pizza spot. A famous pizza spot that it will not be named, estimated $38,000 that they had to pay. And I don't even know if the case was ever even settled, to be totally honest. The thing about the website is that the website was accessible. The mobile app wasn't. And that's where the lawsuit came from. The mobile app wasn't accessible, but the website was. You can make mobile apps accessible, whether you're building for Android, iOS, React Native, right? If you're going the hybrid approach using like Ionic or something like that, you can make those accessible. They are possible. So it's not just a web, right? This is digital accessibility. So let's fast forward, 2021 to 2022. Title III website accessibility lawsuits. Now, I'm going to preface this. I am not a lawyer. This information just comes from the Safarth Law website. These are the numbers. 2017, 814 website lawsuits in a year. 2018, it jumped up, went down just a tad bit in 2019, it went up in 2020, and then it went up in 2021. We went through a rough period in those last couple of years, so the correlation, in my opinion, of going up kind of makes sense, right? We dealt with something extremely horrible at that time. So the numbers could be higher. This is the top 10 states for ADA Title III website accessibility lawsuits from Jan 2021 to December 2021. We got New York, Cali, Florida, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Illinois, Connecticut, Indiana, Oregon, and Wisconsin. The highest being New York with over 2,000. We got some on the low end, right, with Wisconsin at 4, Cali's at 359. This chart I used to have on here, and it had 9 states and Puerto Rico. And the 2 highest states that used to be on this chart were New York and Florida. Excuse me, why would Florida be high? And just in your opinion, why would Florida be high? Anybody from Florida? Yeah? Aging population. Makes perfect sense, right? Why would New York be high? Whoa, calm down. Say it again, one at a time. A lot of lawyers, great answer. What else? Yep, yeah. Did I hear a third answer? A lot of lawyers, different demographics, right? Lots of people. So many people that they live underground because they can't build any higher, which is true. I've seen some pretty cool, like, underground looking places. I've seen some really sweet skyscraper looking places. Right. So there's a lot more happening, different laws, demographics, more lawyers. So that makes a lot of sense. This is from applause.com. With no hard website accessibility laws for websites to follow, businesses continue to struggle with the gray areas of accessibility. What does that mean? If you do the research and you research Title III of the ADA, which is the Accessibility Disabilities Act, there is no quote-unquote law saying something has to be accessible. Some court systems, from my research, do say, though, this is the way this needs to be. Some say, oh, well, it's not really, blah, blah, blah. So it very much depends on the system and the courts and the lawyers, stuff like that. Since there really technically is no law put in place, following the WCAG is your best bet, because that comes from the people who are writing the standards for the web. Bless you. And I love to listen and follow people that are smarter than me in my given field of study, right? You're not going to ask somebody at Kroger how to do surgery, right? You're going to follow and listen to a renowned surgeon or a surgeon within your field. Same principle applies. Going with what the WCAG says is your best bet. It comes from the W3, the World Wide Web Consortium. That's the best way of doing it. This is a good book, too. It's called Structured Negotiation by Lainey Feingold. I've heard amazing things about this. And the premise of the book is negotiating a federal website lawsuit before it kind of gets really dirty, right? So if you haven't read this book, or check it out, or read the preface, whatever, but I've always heard really, really great things about structured negotiation by Lainey Feingold. All right, so we have some problems if we're not building accessible experiences, right? We have a handful of those problems. One of them is losing ROI. We don't want to lose our return on investment. We don't want to lose consumers. We don't want to lose anything. We want to have a great reputation because people talk. And if your experience isn't accessible, someone's going to tell somebody, and that person's going to tell 2 people, and that person's going to tell 4 people, right? You got to worry about legal fees, especially if you own the organization or own the business, or if you're a freelancer, right? There's an opportunity that you could get in some trouble there. Your brand looks bad, just off the rip. Your brand looks bad, and that's not good because a lot of what we're doing is all really about brand awareness, right? Loss of current and future customers, like I was saying, people talk. If the website's not accessible and someone from the accessibility community finds that out, then that's going to keep going and keep snowballing, right? WCAG 2.2 is your responsibility. If you're building these experiences, it's your responsibility to care. It's your responsibility to do the research and figure out how to build these experiences to make sure they're accessible. ADA is your responsibility in the context of digital. You got to be careful with the terminology that you're using. You can't just roll up into a meeting and say, oh, we're ADA compliant, right? Because words can be picked out of a sentence and taken out of context. If you are walking into a place and you're saying you're ADA compliant and you don't have a Sharps container in your bathroom, you're not ADA compliant. If you say you're ADA compliant and you don't have elevators or a wheelchair ramp, you're not ADA compliant. If you say you are ADA compliant, but you don't have oversized keyboards with big print on them, or access to a Braille machine, you are not ADA compliant. So make sure that you're using the proper terminology. And like federal 508, that's a whole other thing too. Like you don't want to just run up and say, oh, we're federal 508 compliant. You got to be very, very careful with the terminology you're using because it can be taken out of context. This is a quote by Steve Krug. Has anybody ever read Steve Krug's book, Don't Make Me Think? It's a good book. It kind of goes back to the design principles, the Nielsen design principles. And one of them being put yourself in the user's shoes, right? Always put yourself in the user's shoes. Because you never know what their mindset is. You never know what their life experience is. You don't know how they're going to use a product or use the web. The one argument for accessibility that doesn't get made nearly often enough is how extraordinarily better it makes some people's lives. You saw the video that I opened with. That made people's lives better because of the software, because of the hardware that you're able to use today. I'm sure the glasses that you're wearing are making your life better because you can see, right? One thing to keep in mind. First, how many front-end devs do we have in here? Back-end devs. Designers? Product owners? Marketing? VP? Someone that has their hand in the web in some experience? Everybody should have their hand up. Who's working in accessibility right as we speak? Oh, let's see, everybody should have their hand up for that one. Oh, everybody should have their hand up for that one. That's all right, you get a pass. Is everybody familiar with overlays? And you're not using them, are you? Say, no, Chris, I'm not using overlays. Because you can make someone's life extraordinarily better doesn't mean, and you'll hear me say this, you heard me say this before, that you're cutting corners. You need to put the work in. There are these things called overlays, accessibility overlays. There's plenty of companies out there that create these overlays. These overlays, you usually see them at the bottom down here with the accessibility logo. It's the person with the arm stretched, usually in blue, possibly in black, round circle. You click it, and it magically makes it more accessible. No, it doesn't. It doesn't magically make anything more accessible. What it can do is manipulate the color on the screen, but it's not manipulating the underlying code. What it can do is turn your screen black and white for monochromatic disability or monochromatic color vision deficiencies, which monochromatic is the most rare. There's 4 types: deuteranopia, protanopia, tritanopia, monochromatic. Monochromatic, 1 in 33,000 people experience that color vision deficiency where you see in shades of gray. Tritanopia is the second or third most. Deuteranopia is what most people have. 1 in 12 men have deuteranopia type of color vision deficiency. 1 in 200 women have deuteranopia color vision deficiency. We don't have to talk about any of that. That's from a study in the UK. You shouldn't be using an overlay for your website. It does more damage than it does good. Usually the overlay itself is a small chunk of JavaScript you embed in your website, and it does a little bit of this, a little bit of that to make you think that it's making the experience better, but it doesn't. And there's a whole website dedicated out there to overlays. I think it's called Overlay Fact Sheet. Quote me on that. Richard, Overlay Fact Sheet? Yeah. You just Google Overlay Fact Sheet, and you will get all the information you need about overlays and how they aren't great and how they do damage to the underlying experience. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to make the experience less than ideal if it's already not ideal as it is. We got a few minutes left. I'm the only thing standing between you and lunch, so we got a couple slides left and we'll be good to go. This is a quote from Marcy. I love quotes. I love when amazing people say amazing things, especially in this space. Marcy's a friend of mine. If you're not following Marcy on Twitter or Blue Sky or LinkedIn, definitely follow Marcy. Every little bit of accessibility you contribute is so appreciated and so needed. Really think about that, right? You're sitting behind your machine and you're writing code and you're building components and maybe you're doing some cool stuff on the back end, but you got to work in the front end a little bit. And you're running an audit locally and your audit's failing. And you start to build in that accessible experience, right? You're starting to write the code that makes it accessible. You're using some pretty cool CSS features that you can use in the accessibility space to make some really cool focus and hover styles for accessibility, right? You're making sure that the font that you're using is accessible and the color that you're using is accessible, right? Someone is going to appreciate that down the line. Someone is going to need that down the line. It's not for nothing, right? We're here to make the web a better place. That's what we're here for. At the end of the day, why are you here? Ask yourself that. Why are you here? Why do you write code? I've been writing code since '96, and it's 2024. I'm old in web years. I'm not old in human years. I'm getting there. It's a true story. What are you doing? Are you here to claim a paycheck? That's totally fine if you are. Or are you here because you love the web, you love the experience, and you want to make people's lives better? You might be writing software that's going to save someone's life in a hospital system. You might be writing software that's going to help a child read. We don't think about those things, do we? We don't. Because we have meetings about meetings, and we have arbitrary deadlines, and we have to ship code as fast as we can. Take a step back and think about these things. You're in the business of making the world a better place through a digital means. That's something to be proud of. I've shipped software that helped people mortgage houses and buy consumer goods when they couldn't, right? It changed someone's life. The software we're shipping at DigitalOcean is used by people all over the world in all different industries. Because of the software that we're shipping to these people to use the software to ship, we are changing someone's life by association. Think about that. So, I want everybody to walk away. We have some questions to ask ourselves and ask our friends and our peers and our colleagues and our team leads and everybody within the community. Does it work with screen readers? Does it work with all screen readers? When you're building this experience, did I test it? Right? You can do automated testing. I'm a big fan of the Xcore. Xcore is created by a company called DQ, not Dairy Queen. I always have to say that. It's not Dairy Queen. But Xcore is an amazing tool. You can install it as an extension in your browser, Firefox, Chromium-based. I don't think they make one for Safari. Lighthouse uses Xcore under the hood, so you can test with Lighthouse. I do a whole talk on using Lighthouse for auditing a web experience. Lighthouse is not the end-all, be-all. Always pair anything that you're doing in Lighthouse with another tool that is similar. There's a bunch of tooling out there to do automated testing. Automated testing is only going to catch between 20 to 50% of all your accessibility issues, depending on what you're doing on a page-by-page basis, unless you're using Xcore Pro, and you can do a whole entire website. If you're just using the extension, it's going to be a page-by-page process, but it's going to give you a print or a readout of all your issues, how to fix them, where they are in the code, highlighting the UI, but you have to make sure that you are manually testing. Don't use your mouse. Don't use your trackpad. Use a screen reader. Can I solely just use a keyboard? Am I able just to navigate this experience just with these keys that are in front of me? Making sure that you're testing that. Have a no mouse day. Does the color contrast work for all users? Color contrast is what I call and what we all call in the accessibility community low-hanging fruit. How the foreground jumps off the background. You want to make sure that the color contrast works. There's an awesome way you can do this in Chrome. I wrote an article about it. If you were to navigate like a text element, maybe like an H1, H2, H3, or a paragraph, You inspect that. You could pull up the color palette in Chrome's DevTools, and you're going to have 2 lines that go across the color palette. One's going to be level AA, and one's going to be AAA. And if you want to see this, I can show you after the talk. Catch me out there. Catch me outside. And you can see it in real time. You can move it around the screen, and you can see the color changing, and you can see whether or not you're passing A or AAA and AA based on the ratio. And there's a whole ratio and math that goes behind this. I don't know what my buddy Todd does, but you can see it changing, and you'll see, a no sign or a green check. It's pretty fresh. Do the images have alt attributes? They're not called alt tags. Stop calling them alt tags. They're attributes. An attribute is what you tack onto an HTML element or an HTML tag, right? Alt equals, quotes, your text, contextual text, right? There's 2 schools of thought to this. Short and descriptive, right? Or long and lengthy. Now what I mean by that is short and descriptive is great, but let's say that you put an image out there, and we have some Stranger Things fans, so let's say the image itself is the picture of Eddie. He's on top of the bus, and he's rocking out to Master of Puppets, and you got the background, and you're in the underneath, or whatever we call it, and you got the Demogorgons and the Demobats everywhere, and you're posting it online. What are you gonna use for your alt text? Eddie playing guitar? No. I wouldn't. You can. But who's Eddie? What guitar? Where is he? What's he doing besides playing guitar? Right? If an image isn't going to be loading, or the image, somebody can't see that image, and it's conveying feeling and emotion, right? Bring that to your user. Let them know. Eddie from Stranger Things, Eddie Munson from Stranger Things is rocking out with a double-headed Gibson in the background with its lava and volcanoes, and he's getting attacked by bats, so that somebody can hear that and start putting that picture together in their head. Now, if you put a picture out there about your dog, you could say, Jane's gray pit bull. Cool. That works. That's fine. Right? Because if somebody knows you, they know you're Jane, and they know you have a pit bull, and it's gray. That's great. You conveyed that meaning. But you need to be selective on how you're doing these things. Right? Think about it. And you always need alt text. You have to have alt text in that attribute. Unless it's a decorative image or what they call eye candy, that is solely based upon the author and the content producer. If there's no contextual meaning for that image, you don't need text in the attribute, but you still have to have empty quotes. Because if not, you're going to get dinged in an audit every time. Doesn't matter. If you leave the alt text out, and if you even leave the attribute out, you're going to get dinged in an audit. So don't leave your alt text out of the attribute. And why should I care? Ask yourself that. Why should I care? Why do you care? Why do you care? Why do I care? You don't have to answer it right now. You don't have to answer it today. But it goes back to your why. What is your why? Why do you care? Some resources if you want. You can scan the QR code. It's at a bit.ly, bit.ly/enterprise-A11y. Give you like 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, I can't see, 2, 2. We good? Cool. Thank you. That's me. That's my time. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Blue Sky. Enjoy the rest of the event. Have a great lunch. I will catch you on the flip.